On June 2nd, 2020, a 5-year-old girl was last seen at her home in Duarte, California. She was reported missing. The Department of Children and Family Services was already involved in a separate investigation concerning her welfare. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department opened a missing child's case. And then, silence. Her mother, who had custody, stopped communicating with DCFS workers. Authorities came to believe the mother was responsible for the child's disappearance. The case went cold. 6 years passed. The little girl, who was 5 in 2020, became 11 in 2026. She was somewhere in this country the entire time, growing up under a name that was not hers, enrolled in a school in Washington County, North Carolina, living a life that had been constructed around her disappearance, built on a lie told by the person who was supposed to protect her the most. 3 months after the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children issued an update-aged progression photo of what she might look like at 11 years old, somebody recognized her. Somebody made a phone call, and on March 6th, 2026, law enforcement agencies from North Carolina to California worked together and they found her, alive, safe, taken into protective custody after 6 years, hidden under a false identity on the other side of the country. John Bischoff of the NCMEC said, after 6 years, the recovery of this child is an incredible moment for everyone who has worked to bring her home. The Washington County Sheriff said, these are very rare occurrences to have such a positive outcome on such an old case as this. But it reminds us that through hard work, dedication, and cooperation, stories with positive outcomes like these can happen. He's right. And tonight, we're going to talk about what this story means for missing children, for the systems that failed this girl and then found her, for the parents, for the communities, and for the faith that refuses to let a child be forgotten.
Courage, compassion, faith, freedom, truth. Welcome to Courage in the Darkness with your host, Philip Roberts. It's time to awaken America.
The facts of this case laid out in sequence tell a story about institutional failure that preceded the institutional success that ultimately found this child. And both parts of that story deserve to be on the record. A 5-year-old girl was living in Duarte, California in June 2020. The Department of Children and Family Services was already involved in an investigation concerning her welfare at the time she disappeared. That detail is not incidental. It means that the institutions designed to protect children from exactly this kind of harm, from a custodial parent who might endanger or take them, were already aware that this child's situation warranted monitoring. DCFS had an open case. There were workers assigned to her. There was a file with her name on it and a responsibility attached to that file. Then the mother stopped communicating with DCFS workers. She went silent, and somewhere in the gap between the last contact and the moment authorities recognized the disappearance for what it was, this child was moved across the country and hidden under a name that was not her own. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department came to believe the mother was responsible for the disappearance. No arrests have been made as of the reporting on this case. The question that the sequence of events demands is, how does a child who is the subject of an active DCFS welfare investigation disappear for 6 years? The answer involves specific vulnerabilities of the child welfare system, a system that is chronically underfunded, perpetually understaffed, operating under caseloads that make the kind of sustained, attentive monitoring that would have prevented this disappearance nearly impossible for the workers assigned to it. DCFS workers in Los Angeles County carry caseloads that routinely exceed what any single human being can adequately supervise. When a parent stops communicating, the process of escalating that silence into a formal missing child report coordinated with law enforcement and triggering the national missing child infrastructure takes time. Time in which a determined parent with a car and a willingness to lie can put 1,000 miles between a child and the system trying to protect her. The age progression photo that NCMEC issued 3 months before this child was found is a tool that has been refined over decades of working missing child cases. It uses forensic imaging to project what a missing child might look like at a later age based on family photographs and biological modeling. The fact that the tip that found this girl came shortly after that updated photo was issued is not coincidental. Someone in Washington County, North Carolina, saw that photo through NCMEC's distribution, through media coverage, through the National Missing Child Network, recognized that 11-year-old girl enrolled in the local school, and made the call that brought her home. That person is a hero. Their name is not public, but their action is. This child's case is being covered primarily as a missing child recovery story, which it is. But the specific nature of her disappearance, taken by a custodial parent, hidden under a false identity, moved across state lines, places it into a category of missing child cases that is both the most common form of child abduction in the United States and the least discussed. The majority of missing children in America are not taken by strangers. They're taken by family members, most commonly by a parent who doesn't have custody, or in cases like this one where DCFS involvement suggests the custodial arrangement itself was contested or concerning, family abduction is the leading category of missing child cases, and it presents specific challenges that the missing child infrastructure was not originally designed to address. Stranger abduction cases, which are statistically rarer but receive the most media attention, are in some way easier to investigate. There's a clear perpetrator category, a clear victim, and a clear crime. Family abduction cases are complicated by the parental relationship, by the child's own confusion and loyalty, by the ease with which a determined parent can construct a new identity in a new location, and by the fact that many of those children are enrolled in schools, taken to doctors, and otherwise living visible lives under false names that no one in their new community has any reason to question. The school enrollment piece of this case is particularly significant. This child was enrolled in the Washington County School District in North Carolina under a false name. She attended school. She had teachers, classmates, probably friends. she existed in a community under an identity that had been constructed for her by the person who took her. The school system, which this show is discussed extensively in the context of what schools are teaching and doing to children, here performed one of its most fundamental functions. It made a child visible. Her enrollment created a record. Her presence in the school created the possibility of recognition. And when someone who had seen the NCMEC age progression photo recognized her, the school enrollment record gave law enforcement the documentation that they needed to locate and recover her. The family court and child welfare system that preceded her disappearance failed her. The school system, 6 years later, inadvertently helped find her. Both of those facts belong in the same accounting, and the accountability for the failure for a child who was the subject of an active DCFS case disappearing for 6 years belongs to the system and the policy choices that produced the caseload conditions, the communication gaps, and the jurisdictional seams that a determined parent was able to exploit for 6 years. No arrests have been made. The mother, whom authorities believed was responsible for the disappearance, has not been charged as of this reporting. The accountability gap should not be allowed to close quietly. A child was hidden from the institutions responsible for her welfare for 6 years. The person responsible for that, whoever it was, should face the full legal consequence available under California law, federal parental kidnapping statutes, and any applicable North Carolina charges. The recovery of that child is a miracle. The accountability for what was done to her is the obligation. This here next section that I'm going to talk about exists because the people who found this child deserve to be named and honored. And because what they did and what the person who made the tip did represents something this show is committed to affirming whenever it appears. Ordinary people and dedicated professionals refusing to accept that a child is lost forever. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has been operating since 1984, founded in the wake of the high-profile abductions of the early 80s that produced the National Missing Child Awareness Movement. NCMEC maintains the National Missing Child Database, operates the cyber tip line for reporting online child exploitation, issues age progression photos, and coordinates between law enforcement agencies across jurisdictions in missing child investigations. John Bischoff, who oversees NCMEC's Missing Children Division, said the recovery of this child reflects the persistence and close coordination between law enforcement and NCMEC, and their shared commitment to never give up on a missing child. Never give up on a missing child. That phrase is easy to say and extraordinarily difficult to live out across the 6 years of an open case with 0 leads, no confirmed sightings, and a child who could be anywhere in the country. The NCMEC staff who kept this case active, who commissioned the age progression photo 3 months before the tip came in, who maintained the institutional commitment to a 5-year-old who disappeared in California in 2020. They didn't know the photo would produce a result within 3 months. They did it because the commitment requires doing it regardless of whether the results come. The Washington County Sheriff's Office and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, agencies in different states separated by the entire breadth of the continent, coordinated to safely recover this child. Interagency coordination in missing child cases is not automatic. It requires institutional relationships, communication protocols, and the specific human commitment of the detectives and officers in each agency who prioritize the case when it lands on their desk. The Washington County Sheriff's statement that these are rare occurrences of positive outcomes on old cases, but that hard work, dedication, and cooperation made them happen, is not public relations language. It's a description of what the recovery of this child actually required from the people who made it happen. And the anonymous person who made the tip, we don't know who they are. We don't know whether they saw the NCMEC photo on a flyer, on a news broadcast, on a social media share, or on the NCMEC website. We don't know whether they recognized the child immediately or whether the recognition built slowly over days of uncertainty before they finally made the call. What we know is that they saw a child. They recognized her. They had the courage to act on that recognition. And they made the phone call that brought an 11-year-old girl back into the protective custody of the institutions that will now work to give her the life she was denied for 6 years. That anonymous phone call is an act of civic heroism. It cost the person who made it nothing except the moment of courage required to pick up the phone. It gave a child back her identity, her future, and the possibility of healing. The recovery of this child is a miracle and a reminder in equal measure. A miracle because these outcomes are rare. The Washington County Sheriff said so directly, and the statistics of missing child cases confirm it. Most cases that go 6 years without resolution do not end with the child found alive, safe, and recoverable. The fact that this one did is an occasion for genuine gratitude and celebration, and a reminder because the conditions that allowed this child to disappear for 6 years and the conditions that ultimately found her both involve choices and behaviors by ordinary people in ordinary communities that can be replicated. Every parent in America should know how to use the NCMEC resources. Know the website. Know the missing child database. Know that age progression photos exist and they're updated on cold cases. Know that the tip line is always open so that the anonymous tip about a child you suspect might be a missing person will be taken seriously, investigated professionally, and it could be the call that brings a child home. The person in Washington County, North Carolina, who recognized this girl did not need law enforcement training, investigative skills, or any kind of specialized knowledge. They needed to have seen the photo to have had the courage to make the call. That's accessible to every single person in every community in this country. Every school employee, teachers, counselors, administrators, office staff should understand that they interact with children who may be living under false identities and circumstances they did not choose. The child who seems a little off, whose family's story doesn't quite add up, whose parent is unusually controlling about school communications, who flinches at questions about where she came from. That child may be exactly what this 11-year-old was. A missing person living in plain sight, enrolled under a name that was not her own, waiting for an adult who pays attention to see past the constructed identity to the child underneath. Schools are not law enforcement agencies and should not become surveillance institutions. But teachers and counselors who are trained to recognize the signs of a child in a concerning situation and who know the reporting pathways available to them are one of the most powerful missing child detection systems available in any community. The faith dimension of this story belongs here because it is real, and because the people doing the work know it. The NCMEC's commitment to never giving up on a missing child is not a policy position. It's a moral stance rooted in the belief that every child has inherent dignity and worth that does not expire when a case goes cold, when the media cycle moves on, when the administrative pressure to close old files builds. That belief that a 5-year-old who disappeared in California in 2020 is still worth finding in 2026, still worth the age progression photo and the database entry and the interagency coordination, is a belief about the value of human life that is ultimately grounded in the same faith that drives this show. Every life matters. Every child matters. No case is too cold. No child is too lost to be worth finding. This girl is 11 years old. She has been living under someone else's name for more than half her life. She's now in protective custody, which means that she's safe. But it also means she's beginning the most difficult work of her recovery, the therapeutic, legal, and relational work of rebuilding an identity and a life after 6 years of having both taken from her. She'll need advocates, counselors, legal representation, and the patient, sustained support of the child welfare system that now has a second chance to protect her. Pray for her. Pray for the people who will work with her. And if you have seen a child who doesn't seem right, who might be someone's missing daughter or son, make the call. It could be the most important phone call that you ever make. A 5-year-old girl disappeared in Duarte, California on June 2nd, 2020. She was found alive in Washington County, North Carolina on March 6th, 2026. 6 years later, 11 years old, living under a name that was not hers, enrolled in a school where someone recognized her and made a call. The agencies that recovered her, NCMEC, the Washington County Sheriff's Office, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, coordinated across a continent and brought her home. No arrests have been made. That accountability is still owed. The mother whom authorities believe was responsible for this child's disappearance has not faced legal consequence as of this reporting. I'll be watching that. I'll be saying so when it changes. The recovery of a child is not the end of accountability. It's the beginning of the next chapter, which includes justice for what was done to her. But tonight, the word is gratitude. Gratitude for the person who made the tip. Gratitude for the investigators who never closed the file. Gratitude for the NCMEC staff who commissioned the age progression photo 3 months ago, not knowing it would bear fruit this quickly. Gratitude for the school enrollment record that made her findable. Gratitude for God, who keeps watch over children even when the adults who should be watching have failed them. She is alive. She's safe. And she is found. That matters. Say it out loud. In a world that moves fast and forgets faster. In a news cycle that will have moved on from this story before the week is out. This child being found alive after 6 years matters. It is worth stopping for. It is worth celebrating. It's worth the reminder it carries. Never give up on a missing child. Never stop looking. Never stop making the call. Stand with us, support the mission, refuse the silence. Find us at TITDUSA.com and the Stand Against the Silence campaign. I'll see you next time.